Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's May 9th. Holy cow, Andrew, it's already May.
Yeah, it came through here, right? And so, I mean, I think that, the first part of the year there, first quarter was a little tough for a lot of us, right? But things have
Yeah,
definitely balanced back out and got back to a little bit closer to what we can expect from a
yeah,
number of transactions perspective anyway, in the last several months, or the last couple months. We're still waiting on April numbers,
yeah.
but in March, between attached and detached property, we did about 4,600 properties or so, so pushing towards that 5,000 number. And I mean, like we've talked about several times, Michael, the Denver market, just by virtue of like the number of agents, number of title companies, number of lenders, yada, 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 we can serve pretty comfortably about 5 to 5,500 properties per month. Not that you can't close more, they'll never close less,
Mhm,
but that's kind of the sweet spot. And we're very, very close to that, right?
mhm.
So I think that's good. And yeah, I've been really happy with that improvement. And I think everyone's starting to get a little more comfortable with the state of the world and the state of our economy, and then making whatever financial decisions as far as their home ownership is concerned for them, right? So yeah. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I think, the other day you had said something that resonated with me. We talked a little bit about balance instead of cramming our entire year into like, mid-February to late June, right? We're seeming to have more of it spread out throughout the year, which personally I like. It's a little bit more balanced. But the other side too is I think we're finding that depending upon the buyer's need, there's better times for them to be shopping, right? So I've always been taught, the month of July is vacation month. If you work for a corporation, the schools, all the summer activities, you name it, pretty much are off in the month of July, right? And people are just gone, right? They're just not here. So it's kind of like if you're going to take a vacation, you should probably go in July. But the reality is that we tend to do more business between that November 1 and the end of February, let's just say, especially for our investor market. If you're a fix and flipper, buy and hold, whatever that might be, that kind of off-season, off-tier market time frame seems to be an amazing time to be out there in the marketplace. And even some that are looking to buy and be an owner occupant, right? Like as you had with all your years of leasing, sometimes the way those leases just end, they kind of end on October 1st, so they end on January 1st. So the timing for people to get into a house and get closed in the off time or off season can be huge, especially in that Denver market.
Yeah, I agree. This is something I think the apartment industry had a really good handle on this for a very long time and very early. And they make use of softwares that are really handy for them that basically help them to not have like a dearth of availability at any given time, right? So they're gonna encourage people through pricing and more friendly terms as far as like, you might get a move-in special or something like that to have their leases balance out throughout the year, right? So rather than have 50 two-bedroom homes come available in June, they want to have like five a month, that they have to fill. And that makes business better for everybody, right? They can have expected income. They don't have to worry about covering their costs. People don't have to worry about moving in exactly on the first of the month or, and there's some exceptions to this, like, markets like Boulder and Fort Collins that have a large student population, but largely in our metro area, they're going to look for that balance throughout the year. And that's one thing that the buy and sell industry hasn't quite seen. Not that people aren't like trying to, people are trying to sell homes 365 days a year, right? But we haven't quite seen that. It does feel like we're kind of moving that direction, and the last several years, I've been in this game for about 10 years now, and I've always had decent wintertime months and fall time months. And I think it's because I came from that leasing side of things where like, good savvy leasing agents would advise clientele to say like, hey, if you want to shop for a new rental, the best time to do it is like November to January, right? Because there tend to be the most moving specials offer. There tends to be better pricing because less people are moving, right? And because the industry can only control so much, right? Like it's if you have an apartment, you can lease it, but if no one wants to rent it, no one will, right? So they can only control so much. So you do tend to get a little bit of pricing there. And yeah, I mean, is it going to stink for, moving if you have to move in the snow or whatever, right? But no one listening to this that doesn't live here already because we're pretty full, but it's not that bad, man. Like it snows like 5 days a year, to where it's like a real concern. So you can probably time it. You're probably going to be okay. No, I got married in October. It was fun. So you can make it happen. And usually that was a good place to be, right? And I kind of brought that mentality in to when I was helping out buyers, particularly first-time home buyers that were kind of hadn't done this before and were like maybe a little bit of sticker shock. And I was like, well, hey, if you guys are comfortable, or if you guys don't have to move right now, if you can stay with parents, if you can extend your lease for a couple months and you want to shop in November, like, yeah, it might suck to move in the snow, but if you're going to get your house for 2 to 5% less, that $1,000 to $1,500 investment you made to move to hire movers so you don't deal with it is going to return in like 3 or 4 months. And you're back to neutral, based on savings. So, and that was really good. And I think I was able to help a lot of people out with that. And that's to a certain extent still true to this day. So I definitely encourage you to explore, and we can look at data on the winter months. But I do think we're starting to see more balance here, right? So I think people are kind of getting used to the weather here, and there's obviously not as many people moving in from like California and Texas that aren't used to snow. Like Texas gets cold, but it doesn't snow all that much. So people are a little more savvy. Maybe this is house number 2 or 3 for them. Maybe they've stayed here and rented in Denver for a couple years, so they understand what's going on. So now it's becoming more appropriate for buyers to say like, hey, it's now is the right time. Like, hey, our kid's due in June. Let's move so we can get the nursery set up and be done, not to worry about it. Hey, we're getting married in October. Let's go ahead and, plan on getting our house so we can just move right into it, not have to deal with it, not wait till December, or not list our place in June because it's the best time. And to a certain extent, that's still true, but largely, I think you're seeing more balance throughout the year, and people are making decisions to buy or sell based upon what's in front of them and what the best timing is for their lives, rather than trying to time this market that, while it did have trends, was always pretty nebulous, right? Like we could never guarantee that 1 to 3 Main Street would sell for less in November and more in June. We
Right,
said like, hey, on average, the Denver market performs 3% better, for closing costs on in November than it does in June. But that wasn't always true, and it was very a house by house basis, which
right,
is how you should make your decision, right? Like your individual home, your individual family and where you want to be, timing is important, but that's more important for your personal experience. It's you shouldn't have time of market. And it was a weird commodity because most things don't work that way. Like you don't like I don't know, the S&P 500 isn't cheaper inherently in November than it is in June. You know what I'm saying?
right,
It's the cost, right? And sure, you're
right,
selling more winter coats in November than you are in May, but that's housing. There's not like an art. You don't like live outside in the summer months, right? Like your house is a consistent product. So I think
right.
we're starting to see that more balanced approach throughout the year. And I also think that agents like me that are kind of around that 5 to 15 year window right there are for the first time seeing a more balanced market from like a macroeconomic perspective, right? So for a long, long time, it was a very, very seller friendly market. People were seeing, you know, 8, 10, 14, and 2020 was 20% increases in value year over year. And that's just bananas, man. Like nothing
Right.
sends like that. Like it's
No,
not sustainable. It's not healthy, you know? I mean, it's, like the market was on steroids essentially, right? And they got big and strong, but you can't maintain that and keep a healthy body, right? So the
right.
market had to adjust, right? And so there are some folks who got into a house that was at the peak of the market, and they may have to, be in their home and ride it out a little bit longer than they otherwise would have in order to kind of balance out their income. But there's people who have, if you bought your house, I don't know, in like 2020 or earlier, 2019, certainly earlier, you're in great shape, it's just there's a few folks that, in a large number that, maybe got into a tighter spot, and they're not upside down. They're not going to lose a bunch of money. They're not going to foreclose. They just may have to be in their house for an extra couple of years over the normal, 3 to 5 that we would expect to see a decent return to have some, some money in your pocket, money in your home. Might have to be 5, 6, 7, and that stinks for some people. The timing is wrong, but it's usually some people can weather, right? And I think while it definitely stings for homeowners that are trying to sell their property that bought it relatively recently. And I mean, if I could make it better, I would, man. It is what it is. But I think in the long-term health of our overall Denver market, for the people who are buying homes now that are going to hopefully, that are going to want to sell them in 5, 10 years, they're going to be in a little better spot than they would have if we just kind of saw this steep decrease, right? So
Mhm.
balance in the long run is good for everybody. If if your home, if Denver homes are going to return on average 5% a year, that is a great place to be, man.
Yeah,
Everyone should be happy with that. That's going to perform about as good as the stock market, but you don't get to live in your stocks. That's going to provide a service for you. It's a great tax benefit. And then when you are ready to move up, if you've been in it for 5 to 10 years, I mean, you can do the math. That's 25 to 50% increase in value. It's a great place to be, man. So that's
right.
kind of where the trend I see us going to is that a little more normalized 5 to 6% increase in value, maybe a more balanced number of transactions instead of having like 40% of our transactions happen in a 90-day period. And that gets really stressful for people too, right? So I think that as we see more balance, stress will alleviate because people know what to expect.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting when when people talk to us all the time about, hey, like when's the best time to buy? Well, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
The next best time is today. So there's that piece of it. But I think the consultative thing that you're talking about here is we guide our clients based on their individual needs and what those goals are, right? And sometimes it's what's the right time for them. All the other pieces will fall into place,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of like you said, there's great times to buy. You guys closed on your home in the month of November. It was fine. It was no big deal, right?
Mhm.
Versus somebody who does it in April. I think it's a matter of having the strategy and the plan so that our buyers are ready to go when the right house shows up, right? Because there's a house for everybody, in that process. And for the large number of the agents that are out there today, you're right. They've only seen a seller's market. It's always been this strong seller's market. But when I first started, it was stepping right into the recession, right? So it was 100% a buyer's market, 12,000, 14,000, 20,000 homes on the market. And people wanted to see everything before they made a decision. And then the conversation with the agent on the other side was, well, how low will it go? It wasn't how high will it go? And then we had the complication of the short sales and foreclosures, but we quickly worked through that. But
Yeah.
there's always a bull market somewhere, right? We're either going to be on the buy side of the transaction, or we're going to be on the listing side of the transaction. Our role is in my opinion, our role is to be there when our clients show up, right?
Mhm.
To help them with no matter what that is in their life. And then that's that consultative approach that I think makes us a little bit different than maybe a transaction-based firm, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I agree. I think every consultation, every transaction needs to be, hyper individualized and hyper centered on that individual family or individual person that's making that transaction, right? So, I mean, I think people can get really, tied around the axle on like macroeconomic data, like, oh man, transactions are down, or the average price is up, average listing price is down, time on market's up, and that's all important data for us as professionals to know, so we can kind of
Yeah.
generally speak to our, what's going on. And maybe if you are like an investor or certainly a developer, that's more valuable information to you. But I mean, for the vast majority of our transactions in the United States are individual people or individual families or maybe a small group of people that are going to buy into like an investment rental or something like that. That circumstance doesn't impact them all that much, right?
Right.
Like, it's I don't know. It kind of makes me think of like there. So if anyone's ever closed on a house in Colorado that's listening to this, there's this like silly little form you have to fill out that the government asks you to um basically say what appliances, if any, were included, or what things beyond appliances were included in the sale, and give like an estimation of the value of it. And it's like fair, average. Everyone just checks fair, average because like it's in they use that to make like broad spectrum adjustments to people's taxes, right? To their property taxes. It's akin to making a housing investment decision based upon that information. It's like, sure, is that information valuable? Yeah, it is. It's necessary and we need it, right? Is it going to be helpful for an individual homeowner or an individual home buyer? Probably not that much, man. Like if you want to say, hey, I'd rather buy in November because I'm on average gonna save 1.5 to 2%, maybe, but that doesn't mean that the house you bought is gonna sell for 2% more in June, or the house that your buddy bought in June is gonna sell for 2% less in November. The individual home is gonna generate a amount of competition and an amount of interest. And if you are one of those interested, competitive people, you're going to jump in there and put your best foot forward and try to negotiate the best deal you can for yourself. And the seller is going to do the same. and we're going to end up in a spot likely somewhere between both of your expectations
Mhm.
and go forward, right? And that's good, guys. That is a good place to be. A less good place to be is when the seller gets to make all the demands and the buyer just has to sit back and say yes, or the inverse. The buyer gets to make all these demands and the seller has to sit back and say yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Balance is good for everybody. You end up in a much more equitable situation. You end up in a
Mhm.
situation where we can negotiate in good faith. And,
Mhm.
and again, like we've talked about before on this podcast several times, like
Mhm.
this is not a adversarial position that we're in, right? Like we are all driving towards the same exact goal. They want to sell a house, you want to buy a house. The details are important, and our job as agents is to help to act as fiduciaries on behalf of our clients and generate the best transaction we can for them. At
Mhm.
the end of the day, the goal is to get a house sold, not fleece anybody on either side of the transaction, right? So,
Right. Right. No, I totally agree, and I think it's win-win deals. I think that's part of our mission statement as a company too, is creating win-win environments for our agents, our clients, our affiliates, and whatnot. Um, so, kind of enough about work. We're stepping into we're going to be May here shortly, and then we're going to be up on Memorial Day in summer. Do you and your wife and the young son have any plans for summer?
nothing crazy as of now. I think we are going to Philadelphia for a wedding. That'll be fun. So, I'm trying to talk Helen into sneaking out to Nazareth to go to the Martin Guitar Museum while we're out there. It's like a hour-ish from Philly, but it's reasonable, and her dad's a guitar guy too, so that might be kind of fun to go out and do that. But beyond that, I think we're probably gonna, stay home and, work on the house. We just, like you said, we just bought it in December, so it's a lot of yard work and a lot of maintenance, getting caught up and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
our vacations probably be like sneaking out for a long weekend to Grand Lake. We love Grand Lake.
Yeah.
Maybe catch a concert or two. We're going to Lumineers later in the year. I know that, so we probably squeeze in one more. But I think we'll stay relatively local. It's been a lot of travel the last couple of years. Like we had last year, I think we had like 4 or 5 out of state trips. The previous year we had like 9 weddings. So I think we're gonna kind of try to, say, let's do some staycationing and get the house a little more up to where we want it to be. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we've been other than our back and forth, obviously to Colorado, every 8 to 10 weeks. But we're actually we're going to Alaska for Memorial Day. We've never been. My brother is retiring from the Air Force, so we're going to go celebrate that with him, with his wife and their 2 kids, our niece and nephew. So we're kind of excited about that.
Nice.
And then other than that, we've kind of canceled a lot of things this year. We're staying home. We're going to stay close to home, other than our back and forth to Colorado, and just kind of enjoy more of the summer lake life. That last couple of years we've been so busy from a work perspective, we almost haven't enjoyed it. Like we haven't
Yeah.
enjoyed that type of stuff. It's there, don't get me wrong, but we
Sure.
haven't like enjoyed it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of what we're thinking about doing this year, is just really kind of enjoying our hometown. you know
How many times do you want to get the boat out?
I'm hoping to get. I mean, last year was only a handful of times.
I was gonna say, I
I'm
know
hoping
last year
to
you were
more
a
this
little
year.
down. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that's been eye-opening since we made the move full-time in 20 is the first of all, when you're local, you don't use your boat as much as if you're a second homeowner.
True.
You're trying to gobble up every bit of water you can while you're here in your week to 10 days. But number two is that the nicest part of the year is really that September, October, and into November. And it's just it's 70, 80 in the daytime. It cools down at night.
Mm.
There's not a cloud in the sky. But what happens is all the events that happen in a resort, in a second home resort market, happen between Memorial Day and Labor Day. That 100 days of summer, right? And
Mhm.
it's like everything gets crammed in, like you were talking about the real estate too, right? So we're hoping to enjoy some of that, just throughout the season and throughout the year. And
Mhm.
the locals, I tell our buyers, I say, if you're locals go out and enjoy the lake on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Yeah.
They don't go on the weekends and holidays. So we're hoping to do a few of those things on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday evening. But we'll see. That's kind of our plan right now.
Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah, it's all those out of towners, man. Looking at you, Loafert. Kind of been mucking up the water for everybody.
I know, I know. I was talking to this family last night, and they'll be their wife's first time here this weekend. He's been here a few times, and I said, "Look, the year-round residents are or like 45,000, right? But I said
Mhm.
the summertime we ballooned to 245,000,
Yeah.
right? It's very packed from that Memorial Day to Labor Day, and even into a little bit later, depending upon where the people are coming from in the kids' schools.
Sure.
Some of these Midwest schools don't start till after Labor Day. I know like in Colorado, you start early August. So it depends kind of where they're coming from,
Mhm.
as well. But yeah, it's you're exactly right. They come and they start churning up the water, churning up the lake, and sometimes it's kind of like a fun show just to sit on our dock and do this and just watch the show and go, oh my god.
Yeah, yeah. We were down there. I can't remember if it was May or June, but it was busy, man. It was fun. It
Yeah.
was a
And
lot
we
of
need
stuff
to
going
get
on.
you and Calvin and Helen back down here now that you've got the boy and have him
Mhm.
enjoy that. We need to maybe figure out a time frame and get you guys down here.
Yeah, that'd be a blast. We definitely need to do that for
Maybe we
sure.
do. Well, we need to do a company retreat. That's the way I look at it.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's always good talking with you. It's such good insight. And those of you listening or watching, these are Fun Fact Friday videos. They're one take. All the ums and buts and crappy lighting. But
Yeah,
we enjoy
barring
doing it.
technical difficulties, they're one take. This was a two take day.
Yeah, well, it was. We
Uh,
get to meet all of our agents and our staff and whatnot, and it's, if nothing else, share some wisdom. And if you're looking for a brokerage, if you're looking for a change, we'd love to have a conversation with you. Contact Andrew or myself. Contact info will be down below. But hope you have an amazing weekend, and we'll talk soon.
yeah.
Out.